Hello and welcome to New Central Television. I am Lekan Onabanjo, and here are stories making headlines beyond the continent. We begin in the United Kingdom, where Valdo Calocane, who killed 3 people in attacks in Nottingham, has been told he is likely to spend the rest of his life in a high-security hospital. He was given a hospital order after admitting manslaughter on the basis of diminished responsibility. Barnaby Webber and Grace O'Malley Kumar, both 19 years, were fatally stabbed on June 13, 2023, along with Iron Coates, who is 65 years. Family members have expressed their disappointment at the sentence. At Nottingham Crown Court, the judge, Justice Turner, told Calocane he remained a danger. Speaking after the sentencing, the victims' families voiced their anger at the outcome. Joining us now to give more insight to this is our international correspondent, Afua Hagan. Now, what do you know about the killer, Valdo Calocane?
Well, Valdo Calocane, the killer of these 3 people in Nottingham on the 13th of June 2020, was someone who had been suffering from mental illness for a long time. You know, he graduated in June 2022 when he was age 30. He himself had been living in the city for a long time, but he wasn't actually born in the city. He was born in Guinea-Bissau in September 1991. He moved to Portugal and his family came to the UK in 2007. He didn't do any A-levels at school. He ended up just becoming, he was told to be a labourer or a cleaner. So his school life was pretty uneventful. But living in the city, he underwent some huge mental health challenges. He went to hospital in 2020 and said that he was having a heart attack, but it turned out actually he was having a psychiatric episode, in and out of A&E, in and out of hospitals for much of his adult life. He was arrested for several things, including criminal damage, being rearrested, and assessed for his psychiatric treatment. There was an attack on a police officer in September 2022 that he wasn't properly charged or prosecuted for, and the family had said, had he been properly assessed, prosecuted and imprisoned at that time, then their relatives could have been saved. And that's a real point of contention for them, because like I said, Calocane was a person who had a real history of mental health problems. And that was something that had been proven throughout his entire life. But the family's anger really comes from, they feel the police and the authorities' inability to detain him and properly protect him, or to protect the public from him, but also protect him from himself.
Tying his medical condition to the court's ruling now, the 32-year-old killer had been diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia before the attacks, and so was given an hospital order. So is there a growing need to address laws around criminal acts like these that perpetrators usually hide under to escape punishment by law?
I think definitely people will feel that in this particular case, where you have someone who quite clearly had severe psychiatric issues, that cannot be an excuse or a reason for them to carry out these heinous acts. You know, the judge in this case said that the sentence obviously results in him being detained in a high security hospital. He said that there were central issues whether at the time of committing the offences he suffered from symptoms of a severe mental disorder. But he said the psychiatric evidence did not detract from the horror and disastrous impact of the offences. But he said in his view that Calocane's abnormality of mind significantly contributed to him perpetrating these attacks. So it really comes down to a person like this who is exhibiting serious psychiatric illness. That cannot be and should never be an excuse for them to commit these criminal acts, and that they should face the full weight of the law. And I think a lot of people will be looking at a case like this, and Calocane will be detained in a psychiatric hospital and convicted of manslaughter. But a lot of people feeling that, you know, perhaps in a case as heinous as this, maybe he shouldn't be. Maybe he should be put in prison. Maybe it should be a murder charge. And I think people will want to see perhaps a review of these particular laws.
Clearly, the families of the victims are dissatisfied with the court ruling and have expressed their anger. What is their argument, and can these verdicts be further challenged at a higher court, or these just put spade to the Calocane case?
No, the families are really, really angry. The family of the inquest said they suffered a great loss, and he goes on to say that failures from the police and the courts and the health service resulted in the murder of my father. They said that the family of Grace O'Malley-Camore, she said, while they've never questioned the man's diagnosis, a lack of toxicology and mental health assessment, as well as missed opportunities to divert his lethal path, will forever play on our minds, and this requires further review. So their point is that the Crown Prosecution Service and the police and all the relevant authorities didn't do enough to stop Calocane from committing these crimes in the first place, didn't detain him, didn't assess him properly, and didn't stop him from carrying out these acts on these streets. Now, they have said that they are committed to reviews into preventing similar tragedies from happening. And they said the Nottinghamshire Healthcare NHS Foundation Trust said they're going to robustly review its treatment of Calocane between May 2020 and September 2022. Now, I think that these statements from the family very, very powerful. And what they are saying is, look, there was opportunities to stop this from happening. And what we would like is for this never to happen to another family. So there has to be reviews put in place to make sure that someone who is a danger to the public and who is suffering from mental health illness can get the support that they need to stop them from committing these kind of crimes, whether that is treatment, whether that is hospitalization. And that's something that the families are very, very insistent on.
Well, as we see, the family seem to have a valid excuse for the case they are presenting. What has been the response of the authorities to these criticisms that have been leveled against him?
Well, the authorities have said that, look, you know, we admit perhaps some wrong has been done here. They're going to review the work that they put into this case, the time that they had with Calocane, especially between May 2020 and September 2022. They're going to have a review of the treatment. They have said that the Crown Prosecution Service were always pushing for the maximum sentence. The families argue that they have been strung along, that they thought that they were going for a murder charge and it turned out to be manslaughter, and that they are hugely disappointed about that. And they said that they're going to look into the expert medical advice. That's the University of Nottingham, and that's Nottinghamshire Healthcare NHS Foundation, along with the police. So they are defending themselves, defending the sentence, saying that it's right, that it's a manslaughter charge, and it is imprisonment in a psychiatric hospital. But they will be doing a review into themselves. But what you have to wonder is can the authorities in this case mark their own homework, as it were? Should they be the people that are looking into themselves? And perhaps it's time for an independent review body to look into the diagnosis and treatment or lack thereof when it comes to Calocane.
Afua Hagan, thank you so much for helping us understand the situation better.
Thank you.
In France, the highest constitutional court on Thursday rejected more than a third of articles in a contentious immigration bill adopted under pressure from the right. The Constitutional Council ruling notably rejected measures in the bill toughening access to social benefits and family reunification, as well as the introduction of immigration quotas set by Parliament. It upheld much of the bill initially presented by President Emmanuel Macron's government, but censored contentious additions made under pressure from the right and far right. Interior Minister Gerald Darmanin hailed the ruling, but a member of parliament of the far-right National Rally Party criticized what he said was a coup by the judges with the backing of the president.
Pour les gens qui l'auraient subi, et puis pour notre République qui aurait été un peu plus défigurée. Bon, maintenant, il faut dire au gouvernement que cette loi n'a pas de sens. Elle règle rien. Alors, non seulement elle est indigne, mais en plus, elle est inefficace. Sauf pour les gens qui seront de plus en plus poursuivis, pourchassés, traqués, etc. Donc, la suite, c'est demander que le gouvernement ne la promulgue pas. Ça va être la suite des mobilisations.
Still in France, farmers let their anger explode again on Thursday, some going so far as threatening to blockade Paris to demand the government to respond without delay to their distress. Farmers organized 77 blockade points on Thursday across France, while the Ile-de-France sections of the FNSEA and young farmers called on their members to gather on Friday on the main roads around the capital. A sign that the base has been the driving force in this mobilization for a week. National organizations have so far not joined this call to block Ile-de-France. The FNSEA and the JA presented a list of 140 demands to the Prime Minister on Wednesday evening, ranging from the immediate payment of aid to the reduction of environmental constraints.
La capitale doit être un des derniers recours. Toutes les possibilités sont sur la table, on peut tout imaginer. Vous savez que nos deux réseaux sont capables d'imaginer plein de choses, même des choses qu'on n'aurait peut-être pas pu prévoir. Mais la balle est dans le camp du gouvernement et à eux de faire aussi que...
Away from France, the Spanish Senate has approved a bill to amend the country's constitution, replacing the word handicapped with people with disabilities in Article 49. Activists hope this move will help change Spanish society's approach to people with disabilities. The bill passed overwhelmingly with 254 votes in favor and only 3 votes against. The reform, which also expands their rights, is only the third ever change to Spain's constitution since it was approved in 1978 and the first of a social nature.
De 4 millones de hombres y mujeres que en España viven con algún tipo de discapacidad, pero no solo de ellos, sino también de sus familias y de las asociaciones que les dan soporte y ayudan. Lo que hacemos hoy es un acto de justicia para todos ellos, con la reivindicación.
No solo desterramos una palabra denigrante para las personas como yo. Restauramos la dignidad de millones de personas. Nuestra Constitución desde hoy nos nombra por lo que somos.
Señorías, hoy sin duda estamos haciendo un acto de justicia, claramente tardío, que se corresponde con el reconocimiento de la dignidad y de la igualdad de las personas con discapacidad en nuestra norma fundamental.
In Russia, a nationalist and ex-rebel commander Igor Lekan, whose pro-Moscow militants sparked a decade-long armed conflict in East Ukraine, was jailed for 4 years on Thursday after repeatedly criticizing the Kremlin. Moscow City Court said Lekan was found guilty of public calls to carry out extremist activities. Lekan's lawyer, Gaji Aliyev, said after reviewing the minutes of the court session and the text of the meeting, an appeal will be filed against the verdict.
Запад может радоваться. Их главный враг сидит за решеткой. Они могут вздохнуть теперь свободно. Для их интервенции ворота открыты. Никто на пути их больше не встанет. Сегодня будет салют в Киеве пускать, что их врага наконец-то посадили.
Будем надеяться все-таки на справедливость. Возможно, она у этих людей проснется после выборов.
Вам хватает?
Да.
Сторона защиты с приговором не согласна. Считает его незаконным, несправедливым и подлежащим отмене. После ознакомления с протоколом судебного заседания и с текстом...
In South America, firefighters, police officers and civil defense volunteers attempted to extinguish a forest fire in Nottingham, 60 kilometers north of Colombia's capital, Bogota. The South American country has declared a state of emergency in 2 regions as dozens of forest fires continue to burn wide swaths of land and have left the capital choking on smoke during record temperatures linked with the El Nino weather phenomenon. Colombia has already extinguished hundreds of fires this month, but 25 still continue to burn. In the departments of Santander and Cundinamarca, where the capital Bogota is located, The fires have consumed about 600 hectares of forest and states of emergency were declared. Let's now go on a short break. When we return, we'll bring you more stories. Now head to North America, where Donald Trump's sexual assault defamation trial in New York resumed on Thursday, 2 days after the Republican primaries in New Hampshire, with the former U.S. president expected to testify. Writer Jean Carroll, 80 years, is seeking more than $10 million, alleging that the frontrunner for the Republican presidential nomination defamed her. The jury will decide only how much Trump should be forced to pay her. The New York trial is also separate from the 4 criminal cases and the civil fraud case the real estate tycoon faces. In the meantime, an Alabama death row inmate is expected to become the first person in the United States to be executed with nitrogen gas after losing last-minute appeals. The U.S. Supreme Court and the Lower Appeals Court declined to block what Kenneth Eugene Smith's lawyers called a cruel and unusual punishment. Opponents say using nitrogen could cause unnecessary suffering and a leak could harm people present in the room. 58-year-old Smith was convicted in 1989 of murdering Elizabeth Sennett. Alabama has 30 hours to carry out the execution, which involves pumping nitrogen gas through a mask. Still in the region, the unions of Argentina have displayed a show of force against the economic adjustments and the reforms promoted by the government of the ultra-liberal Javier Milei, with a general strike and protests that brought together tens of thousands of people through the country under the slogan, "The country is not for sale." Unions of oil workers, journalists, cultural workers, hospitals, science workers, as well as members of neighborhood organizations, human rights organizations, and other sectors participated in the demonstration in Buenos Aires, carrying signs such as "No to the cultural blackout." The protest was called by the largest union center in Argentina, the General Confederation of Labor, with a Peronist orientation, in rejection of the changes by decree of the labor regime promoted by Milei, which limits the right to strike and affects the financing of the guilds.
Que hemos realizado esta convocatoria para plantear nuestra más amplia solidaridad con la movilización, con el paro nacional que se ha desarrollado al otro lado de la cordillera, denunciando este paquete de medidas que atacan al pueblo trabajador argentino. Lo decimos claramente, el mega DNU, la ley Ómnibus, es un plan de guerra en contra de la de los trabajadores argentinos.
En Argentina han intentado amedrentar con amenazas de recorte de los planes sociales por la cantidad de masa de desocupados que hay, están jugando con el hambre. Han intentado amedrentar con un protocolo antipiquete y antiprotestas, es decir, para imposibilitar que uno se movilice libremente.
Moving to Asia now, 2 U.S. lawmakers met with Taiwanese President-elect Lai Ching-te on Thursday to reaffirm Washington's support for the self-ruled island, which China claims as part of its territory. Despite warnings from Beijing that Lai would bring war and decline to Taiwan, he won the January 13 poll, securing a third term for the Democratic Progressive Party, which rejects China's claim to the island. Democrat Amy Barra of California and Florida Republican Mario Diaz-Balart arrived in Taipei on Wednesday in their roles as co-chairs of the Congressional Taiwan Caucus. The representatives are expected to stay until Friday. Lai, who is Taiwan's current vice president, thanked them for showing their support via concrete action.
And of light, and of freedom, and of democracy, and it's such a direct contrast to what we're seeing coming from the Communist Party of China. It is frustrating, but I'm optimistic that you're going to see some pretty concrete improvements. And part of that is that we have to be dedicated to spending what we need to spend in order to. But if you look at the entire caucus, it's an absolutely bipartisan caucus. And so that's going to remain, regardless of what happens. There's very strong understanding in Congress and very strong support for Taiwan. And I'm actually very confident that that will remain regardless of who is in the White House, so that there is no confusion that Taiwan will defend herself. But it's also important for everybody to know that the United States also stands.
In China, 12 people have been taken into police custody for their alleged role in a deadly fire in central Jiangxi province. At least 39 people died and 9 others were injured after a fire broke out at a store in the city of Xinyu on January 24. President Xi Jinping called for deep reflection after the fire and greater efforts to curb the frequent occurrence of safety accidents. Citing the local authorities, the cause of the blaze had been the illegal use of fire by workers in the store's basement. The fire came just days after a late evening blaze at a school in central China's Henan province, killing 13 students on January 20. In the meantime, China on Thursday warned that the European Union's economic image was at stake after the bloc unveiled new measures to protect sensitive technology from falling into the hands of geopolitical rivals. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman Wang Wenbin stated this while urging the EU against taking anti-globalization steps. Brussels has bolstered its armory of trade restrictions to tackle what it deems to be risks to European economic security following Moscow's invasion of Ukraine and global trade tensions. On Wednesday, EU officials outlined an economic security package containing 5 initiatives, including toughening rules on the screening of foreign direct investments and launching discussions on coordination in the area of export controls.
国际社会对欧盟在经贸领域的保护主义、单边主义动向有不少担忧和关切，有关动向将加剧这种担忧。希望欧盟遵守自由贸易、公平竞争、开放合作等市场经济的基本准则，遵守世贸组织规则，避免出台逆全球化、泛安全化的政策举措。这事关欧盟在国际经贸领域的形象，更事关中国等各国企业。
In the Middle East, armed tribal forces affiliated with Yemen's Houthi rebels rallied on the outskirts of Sana'a against Israel, US and British strikes against them. The Iran-backed rebels have launched repeated attacks on shipping vessels in the Red Sea since mid-November. They say they are targeting Israeli-linked vessels in support of Palestinians in Gaza.
للأمريكان والبريطانيين ولليهود إننا ثابتين وسنقف وسنقاتلهم سواء في البحر أو في البر أو في الجو.
خرجنا لكي نقول للأمريكي والإسرائيلي نحن مع أخوتنا الفلسطينيين من داخل قلوبنا وجاهزين حتى نقدم آخر واحد في اليمن وكلنا مستعدون.
سنقول لأولئك الطواغيت والمجرمون لا تخيفنا ضرباتكم ولا طائراتكم ولا دباباتكم.
And that's all at this hour. Do follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV. You can watch News Central live on DSTV channel 422, Star Times channel 274, Avo TV and YouTube. Many thanks for watching. I am Lekan Onabanjo.